Hello and welcome to a FlossTube. I'm KristaWest. I'm the designer and owner of Avlea Folk Embroidery, and this is the January 2025 FlossTube. I am so happy to be here. It has been a hot minute since I've been on FlossTube. Things have just been really busy over the last few months. I ended up moving to Central Oregon, and it's been great. But it's just taken a while for the dust to settle. So I haven't been on FlossTube the last couple of months. But here we are. I have tons to share with you. So much to share with you. December releases, January releases, new fabrics, sneak peeks, February release sneak peeks, all sorts of fun stuff. A little bit about some fabrics I found in my recent trip to Greece. So stay tuned, settle in, grab your stitching, cup of tea. It's going to be a really, really fun time together today. So for those of you who are new here, I'm KristaWest. I'm the designer of Avlea Folk Embroidery, and I specialize in traditional folk embroidery. So I do cross-stitch and folk embroidery designs that are all inspired by traditional folk embroidery textiles. Now, why am I saying folk embroidery and cross-stitch? It's because while many folk embroideries utilize cross-stitch, a lot of them actually utilize other techniques. And so I kind of use the all-encompassing term of folk embroidery. The majority of my patterns are for cross-stitch and also include a little back-stitch. Some of them include a little back-stitching. But so if you're used to cross-stitch, they're great. But as I'm developing new designs, and especially after my recent trip to Greece, I am going to be adding in some new techniques and styles of embroidery over this next year. So that's why I'm really leaning into the folk embroidery part. You can find all of my designs, PDF patterns, all the things, kits, at the Avlea Folk Embroidery. The website's going to be in the notes. I recently moved my website to a new platform, and so the website address is different, but the old website will still take you there. The new website address is avleafolkembroidery.com. So I ended up having to migrate from my old hosting service to a new Shopify site. And while it was a lot of work, it was most of my November and December, every waking minute, but it's been so great. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has sent me encouraging emails. Moving a website is not, it is just a huge task. And there have been I really appreciate everyone who's shot me an email and said, hey, I love how you've put all the categories at the top and it's easy to find things. It's easier to navigate. People have said, I love how you can see all the photos at one time and not have to click through a slider. So all of those things, all those comments, that just means the world to me. So thank you to everybody who sent me that encouragement. You can also find my designs and kind of follow along my creative journey on Instagram. My Instagram address will be in the notes too. My Instagram address is actually just my name, kristamwest. Or you can also just search Avlea Folk Embroidery and you'll, find all the posts and everything. I was pretty excited last month to actually cross over to 15,000 followers. If you would have told me that, oh my gosh, 4 years ago when I had 300 followers, I would have not believed you. But it's just been so exciting and so exciting to have so many more people engaging with traditional folk embroidery, because that's really why I do what I do. I love traditional folk embroidery. I love traditional textile designs, and I want to make those accessible and exciting for modern stitchers. So that's really what I love to do. So let's see. Oh, if you are new to the website, definitely sign up for the emails, because there are certain sales that happen through the year, discount codes that only go out to the email list. And so anyways, so you definitely want to sign up for the emails. I only send one email a week. I really try to respect your time and your attention. And it's just one email, a few pretty pictures of embroidery, and usually a paragraph or two on what's going on in my week. So it's pretty basic. So, okay, let's jump into the embroideries because there are so many of them. So we're going to start with December, and and then I just realized I probably didn't mention it. You'll notice my floss wall looks a little different and my background looks a little different. Another reason, if the website migration wasn't enough and going to Greece wasn't enough on my plate this fall, late last summer, our family moved to Central Oregon. And so I'm now living in Sisters, Oregon, which I absolutely love. It had been a dream of our families for a long time. And we got the opportunity this summer and decided to just go for it. and it's been fantastic. I love being back near the forest. I can't remember if I've mentioned this really in any FlossTubes, if it's come up, but I spent a huge part of my childhood in the foothills of Mount St. Helens in the Cascade Mountains. My parents had a very primitive cabin, think propane generator primitive and wood stove for heat, very, very primitive. But we spent lots of weekends and summer vacations and holidays up there, and it was just way out in the woods. Our nearest neighbors were a mile away. It's really where I first learned to craft because, in the winter there wasn't much else to do if you didn't want to go out and walk around in the rain. And so I just have this real affinity for being with trees. So I'm definitely a tree girl. And so I love that I can go out now and I'm just very close to the forest and the trees, and I go out and walk and think about designs and think about new things to come up with, new creative ideas, things like that, process things like that. So it's been a really, really good move, and I'm really excited to be here. It's also Sisters, Oregon. I did not know this beforehand. It's a huge textile town. Oh my word. There are so many textile friendly people here. It's amazing. They host the largest outdoor quilt show in the world, is actually held here in Sisters, Oregon in the summer. It's, I think, the second Saturday in July. You literally cannot park anywhere because there's so many people that are flooding this town to go out and look at all of these quilts that are displayed outside. It's just incredible. I didn't know that. I did a book signing at the local bookstore and it was packed. And I'm like, where are all these textile people coming from? So I feel like I've really landed on my feet in this very, very wonderful little mountain town that is so welcoming to textile artists like myself. So very exciting. So without further ado, let's get into those embroideries. So in December, I released Tallene's Tulips. And I want to just talk with you a little bit about that today because I haven't featured this in a FlossTube yet. And Tallene's Tulips is a gorgeous piece. It's a very long table runner. It's the longest Avlea kit to date. It's my largest design to date. And it has a really interesting story. So let me back up. Okay, so let me get a little closer and show you this motif. So if you look at this motif, you can see this square motif here. I'm going to get even a little closer. This square motif with the crisscross and the flowers and little almost like pinwheel design. And it's this wonderful combination of bold geometric elements with all this little delicate backstitching, outlining that just totally gives it this just amazing quality. This version, the Tallene's version, this one is actually a very faithful reproduction of a vintage textile that an Avlea stitcher named Tallene shared with me that her Armenian relative had stitched. But as soon as she sent me photos, it was about a year and a half ago, she sent me a number of photos of some of her family's heirloom folk embroideries, which is always just so wonderful. I love seeing these pieces. And I looked at this one and I was like, wait, I recognize that motif. I don't recognize the layout with the three elements like this, and I don't recognize the border, but that motif looks super familiar to me. Then I was like, wait, I know why I know this. Because I have an embroidery from Athens in my own collection that I got from Athens that is the exact same motif, but in a tiled format. And I've had this embroidery for a number of years. Let me get close and show this to you because it's a really cool adaptation of the design. It's the same crisscross design with the same flowers, the same pinwheels, same kind of heavy geometric block, but it's done in this tile format. And then there's this stitches in between that are actually back stitches that are placed one thread apart to give this really kind of delicate, almost like floating sensation where the blocks kind of float on there. If I can kind of show you that, I'm going to hold that up for a minute so you can kind of get a sense of that. And so I was like, wait, it's the same motif. And I was like, but this is so interesting to see a motif like this because it really tells you really how it shows. It's a wonderful illustration, both of these pieces being so different. They really show how folk embroidery motifs have really circulated around the globe and they get adapted and changed in different cultures. And I love this piece. I've had this piece for years. I was thrilled when I found that in Athens. But this, what I found so interesting, same geometric motif, but here it's got this very heavy all over feel. It's like, it almost like creates its own textile with all the stitching. But the Tillene's Tulips actually has this incredibly light and airy and sort of graceful feel because of all of the negative space, all the white linen that's left unstitched. The other thing that I really loved in this design, and I'll get close again so you can see it, is the little tiny spooled border. Well, I loved the colors. The color palette on this is so fun. My daughter was helping me wind floss for this, and we both are like, we love these colors. They're so fun to wind because they're just so happy. They're these happy cherry colors. And this spool border, it looks like little X's. I'm going to see if I can get close enough. Hopefully I'm getting that close enough to the camera where you can see that. This little spooled border is used on the outside, and then it's also used here. So these little spool motifs. And I just love anything that's a spool motif because my primary career was as a tailor for years and years and years. So I just love this design. When I made this, I did decide, I thought about making a smaller version, but I decided that this one was so special that I really needed to do a very something that really honored the original and keep it as close as possible to the original. So I varied some colors to like make the repeats easier, and I swapped out a few colors, but other than that, it's pretty faithful to the original textile. And then I worked it on 30 count vanilla linen. So it's like a nice kind of warm white linen so that these bright colors really pop. I actually have it displayed in my little office area. I have it actually displayed on the wall. I'm using just one of these magnetic poster bars, and I love it actually as a wall hanging. It's a very impressive and wonderful wall hanging. So I like that I can use it both as a wall hanging and as a table runner. Now, in my research for this piece, I also found another version of it, a Syro-Armenian version of it that was a smaller table mat version. And I decided to draft that as well. And actually, one of my friends, Maria, who does some sample stitching for me, just sent it back to me yesterday. So I get to show it to you, hot off the presses, not even hemmed yet, is this version. So I'm going to also be releasing the Tillene's Tulips in a smaller version that just has one of the main repeats here. So you kind of get all the gorgeousness of this design, but in a smaller package. So that should be coming really soon. This will just, whenever I have it prepped and ready and photographed, it will just release. It won't be like a monthly release. So basically I'll probably just send out an email when this one's ready, or mention it in the weekly email when this one's ready. So that's going to be ready to go, which is going to be, so fun. I just love, 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 love this design. So anyways, so there's that. Okay, so that's Tillene's Tulips. That was December. Now let's move on to January, because I just released 2 new designs. One of them is Santorini Floral, and I don't have the sample because the sample stitcher needed it back to give as a Christmas gift. So I don't have the sample for that. And I will say on that one, if I'm really being honest, I wasn't 100% happy with the photos I took, but it was my first day taking photos in my new little office space, and I was figuring it out as I was going along. And I feel like I'm learning to work with the Central Oregon light, which actually is so abundant, it's like I almost don't know what to do with myself. Because in the Willamette Valley, when I lived in the Willamette Valley, I had to plan my year around when I could take photographs. Because there was a good 5 months out of the year that I really could not take photographs because of it being rainy and gloomy most of the time. And here, there's like a gazillion days of sunshine. So I'm really looking forward to how I'm going to be able to sort of advance my photography skills now that I can get regular practice because I have the natural light to work with. So it's very exciting. So I don't have Santorini Floral, but that one, those of you who have seen it in the emails or seen it on the website, it is actually a really cool square design, and it's a square border design, much like some of my designs like Clara's Garden or Blue Larkspur, but it has this really cool central motif in the middle. If you love the really floral stuff, it's fantastic. That design was inspired by a photo I saw. I saw a photo of this old Greek embroidery that was done in red and white on kind of a really heavy, kind of coarse textured linen, kind of linen-like fabric. And it was done at a lower stitch count, all in red on this kind of very rustic-y looking linen. And I just felt like the design needed something a little bit more bright and vibrant. And so I played around with the colors. It actually took me months to get the palette correct on that one. I probably spent 4 or 5 months just every couple of weeks circling back to that palette, trying another this, trying another that, trying another that. And it's a really great palette. It's a palette of the, let me think, the 930 Antique Blue. It's the 221, I think of it as ruby red, but it's actually shell pink, very dark. And then it has touches of the golden olive and the turquoise, and I think it has both, yeah, memory serves correct, both of the classic warm Mediterranean greens, the 469 and the 3012. It's a really great design and really beautiful. If you like the more floral designs, it's just fantastic. So that's also released and on the website, and it is on 30 count vanilla linen. Okay, had to think about that for a minute. The next January release is Avlea. Now, many of you love the geometric all over designs, and I'm right there with you. And this month really showed between the floral design of Santorini Floral and the strongly geometric, architecturally inspired Avlea, we kind of see the full spectrum of folk embroidery and how it can encompass everything from these amazing, graceful, delicate florals to these very sort of bold, repeating all over designs. So one of the things I love the most about folk embroidery is the wide variety. There really is just almost something for everyone in folk embroidery. But this design has a really great backstory. So over the last year, I've been working, well, actually almost 2 years now, I've been playing around with using architectural elements or decorative architectural elements for cross-stitch designs. I released a design, Oak Park Diamonds, which was inspired by an East Lake architecture window, a leaded glass window from the late 1800s. I released that maybe, I think, a little over a year ago. And then I released Somerset Meander this past October, and that is actually inspired by the mosaic floor designs of the British architect and designer Owen Jones. And I love the response I'm getting from you guys. I know they're not everybody's cup of tea. This isn't like what everybody wants to stitch. But for those of us who just really love our geometry and our mathy stitching and like all these things and decorative elements, they're really fun to stitch. They're also great projects for meditative stitching. When you want to stitch on something where I'm just about the stitching, I just cannot, I've had a day, like I just cannot follow a pattern. I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the brain space. I want something really easy and repetitive. These are great for that. So I'm going to get a little closer and show you the design. So this is the design of Avlea. So you can see that. And it's stitched on the traditional ground cloth, 26 count. The traditional ground cloth, actually, I can't remember I haven't had a FlossTube, but I haven't really mentioned this since I got back from Greece. But I was delighted to find out when I was in Greece, I went and I met with the family mill that produces our traditional ground cloth. And I was delighted to find out that it's actually made with all Greek-grown cotton. So it really is a local product to Greece. And that was just really exciting to me. And to work with a family that's been producing this fabric for 3 generations, I don't know, it just felt really great. They're really great people. They're very, the current owner, who's the grandson of the grandfather, is just so supportive of like the work I'm doing to sort of get the word out there about folk embroidery. So it was really great. So I was excited to learn that it is actually Greek-grown cotton, but it adapts itself really well to these all-over designs because the fabric itself has a really wonderful texture. So they kind of like play together very well. But this design was actually inspired by the House of Stone Carpets, one of the floors of the House of Stone Carpets in Ravenna, Italy. This is a little tiny museum that most people have never heard of, but it is amazing. And we discovered it by accident. So back in, it would have been like, let me think. It was before my youngest was born. It was like, yeah, I can't remember. 2008, 2010, I can't remember what. No, maybe she had been born. She was little. But anyways, I was working on a book, on an academic press had asked me to write a book about my tailoring work. And I needed to research color theory, and I needed to go to Ravenna, Italy to see the Byzantine mosaics there in person. I am a huge fan of Byzantine mosaics. But what's interesting about mosaics and how they inform color theory is that they don't change color. So whereas textiles, flosses, threads, fibers, papyruses, clothing, garments, those things that were dyed with natural dyes can change color over the years. Like, I think the most famous one that probably most of you have heard about is like the unicorn tapestries in France. It's thought that those colors are actually completely different. They've actually faded to be completely different colors than like what they were originally. That a number of those colors aren't like what the original was actually designed to be. So with textiles, we have this issue of degradation and color change. But with mosaics, stone tends to hold its color for centuries. So I went to go research, at the time I was researching Tyrian purple, which is not actually purple. It's the color porphyria, and it is actually more like a very deep kind of brownish burgundy. And so I had to go to Ravenna, and I needed to lay eyes myself on the mosaics because my theory was that the mosaics really were actually burgundy, the ones that were burgundy, that the garments were burgundy, yet all modern books on art history print those, the printing limitations of modern printing with using only the magenta, the cyan, and the yellow. It changes those to make them look purple. So most art history books refer to those mosaics as purple, but when you actually stand in front of them, which I got to do, which was an amazing experience, they are actually burgundy. So it's one of those things that I was studying and I was writing about and everything. So my husband and I were in Ravenna, Italy, and it had just been like a dream of ours for like decades to go to Ravenna, Italy and see the mosaics. So there we were. The book had given us kind of this excuse to do it. And we're coming back from one of the, there's a number of churches in Ravenna that have Byzantine mosaics. So we were walking back from one of them and we see this sign that says House of Stone Carpets. And I'm like, carpet? I'm kind of like textile things like that. I'm kind of like squirrel, like a dog. Carpet? Okay. And I love carpets. So I'm like, carpet? Let's go see the House of Stone Carpets. What is that? I've never heard of it. Well, it turns out that a number of years ago in Ravenna, Italy, they were excavating for a parking garage. And when they excavated, they discovered a complete intact Byzantine courtyard home with all the floor mosaics intact. It was an incredible art history discovery. It's something like 3,000 square feet of mosaics. So to give you an idea of that, like say a fairly large American home, imagine like a really large American home, say a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. Imagine that all spread out, like all one floor, all spread out. So you go into this little church and you go down this weird, like kind of corridor, and then you go down these stairs. And at this point you're thinking, now I'm nervous. Am I actually in a horror flick? Because seriously, it's so dark and you go down here and you see these little dim lights and you're like, I'm kind of feeling like maybe I'm in the wrong place. But you go through this doorway and suddenly you're in this huge space with these big columns. And there are these acrylic see-through catwalks over everything. So you can walk like you're suspended a couple of feet above all of the floors. If you're curious about it, Google House of Stone Carpets, Italy, and you'll see pictures. And it is just amazing. Well, when I was there, I took a photo of one of them and I was like, oh, I've got to do something with this design. So it's literally sat on my design back burner for probably 15 years. And it was last year, I was like, I'm finally going to get around to doing that. And this was the result. So if you go to the website and you pull up the Avlea pattern or kit, you can see the mosaic right there. And so that was another design. So for me, this one actually feels very personal because it was just such a fun discovery and such an amazing museum. And if you've never been to Ravenna, wow, I highly recommend it. Super fun. Plus we stayed in this hilarious, kind of like bed and breakfast. And we literally thought we had landed in the Italian version of Fawlty Towers. The hotel keeper actually looked just like John Cleese. And there was a breakfast room just like Fawlty Towers. So for those of you who are Fawlty Towers fans, which my kids absolutely are, it was literally like stepping into Italian Fawlty Towers. So it was a great trip. Anyways, so Avlea, all over design, great for repeating, great for meditative stitching. So that's everything that's been released. And you've been hanging out with me till now. So now we're going to get into the fun sneak peeky stuff. Okay, so I recently got in a number of new fabrics. I'm working with the mill in Europe that produces our linen, and by working with them directly, I got their entire catalog. Oh, wowza. So fun. And it turns out they have this fabric that really meets a need that I've been aware of for a long time. And so I want to tell you a little bit about that. So let me hold up the first thing I stitched on it. So basically, what is this fabric? Okay, so those of you who followed along for a while know that folk embroidery is all about making stuff to be used. That we're making cushion covers, we're making table runners. This is not textiles behind glass hung on the wall. This is like textiles, all around your house and used and loved and enjoyed and appreciated like every day. One of the things that I've designed over the last couple of years that really surprised me how popular it was were my basket cloth kits and designs. So that would be the Antonia and the Louisa. And they're these simple little basket cloth kits. They are great for beginners. They're great for gifts. They're fantastic, and people really like them. They're kind of simple, but they just really elevate. If you're going to put a little basket of bread on your table, they really elevate the experience. And I've had so many people say, oh, I love this. This was a great first introduction to folk embroidery. Thank you, thank you. But I have had people that have said, oh, excuse me, I'm really intimidated by the drawn thread hemming. Do you have any other finish that you could do that would be easier for a beginner that I could at least do to get my feet wet before I move on to drawn thread hemming? And I was like, well, okay, there are fringe finish techniques. I learned a new one in Greece, but all of those require something that's at least sort of akin to drawn thread hemming, so I wouldn't exactly put them in this super beginner category. So I've been thinking about it, and actually a couple of summers ago, I did a bookmark kit for it was for Yarn Yay subscription boxes. And we did this bookmark kit, and I used this old technique that I'd seen before, where you basically stitch a row of stitches around the perimeter of your piece, and then you just remove threads. You remove the horizontal threads to the line of stitches, and that creates this really charming little fringe. And I thought about doing it with some of our other fabrics, but I think that it just didn't feel quite right. Well, when I got the samples from the mill, they had this really fabulous even weave fabric that is, okay, I'm going to show you this. I haven't finished it yet, but I have one piece finished, so I can show you the piece. But here we go. It's blue. I just love it. See, I even coordinated my shirt today so that I could match the fabric. So what this fabric is, let me get close. I'm going to get a little close with this. What this is a 25 count, 100% cotton, even weave fabric. So it is very, very similar in texture to my Mickany 26 count, but it is a little bit thicker. Not crazy thick, just a little bit thicker, and thickness in fabric usually translates to durability. And so I was like, boy, can you pop this stuff in the machine? And so I popped it in the machine. It came out like a dream. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And then I was like, okay, great. Well, I'm gonna do the easy fringe finish and try that. And I know the machine is gonna mess that up. So whatever, that dream is gonna die. Took it out of the machine, and there it was, absolutely gorgeous. So I started playing around with it. And so what I'm doing is I'm designing, this will be a new basket cloth. I don't know exactly when I'm gonna release it, soon. February or March. This is the basket cloth on the blue, and this is a really cool Romanian design. And it's just another one of these designs where we're filling it, we're kind of making this border with the idea that we'll fringe. I'll do a video, actually, that's later today. I'm going to be doing a video on doing the fringe. But basically, you just pull a thread out, trim your fabric. What you're seeing here, the burgundy that you're seeing here is the serged edge of the fabric. But then you just pull out a thread, trim it, and then you just remove all the little horizontal threads. And then you have this really charming fringe. And so I just thought this could be so great for when you want, for a great way for beginners to kind of dip their toe in the water of finishing their embroideries to actually be used, when you wanted to make a gift, when you wanted a quick project, all of this, or also when you actually wanted to stitch something on a color. That's something I've been aware of. I mean, I know a lot of you love stitching on color, and that's something I've been focused on over the last year, is trying to find some more color options. And I just fell in love with this blue. I'm going to call this Aegean blue. So I have the 25 count even weave. It's going to be on the website soon. Again, watch the emails. I'll mention an email as soon as it's ready to go. And it will sell. The blue is a little narrower than the white or the ivory. Not really sure why that is. I forgot to ask. But for some reason, so the kits with the blue might be just a smidge more expensive, but it's because the fabric is, I think, 10 inches narrower. So anyways, so it's going to be super easy to work on. And because I wanted everybody to get kind of a taste of it, I have developed 3 bit kits in it, because it's been a while since I've developed a bit kit. And for those of you who are new here, my bit kits are sort of my little half-size kits. And they use like a half a piece. They're a pattern folded in half. The kit comes in a 6x9 envelope. And how I really originally kind of thought of them was like a little bit of embroidery. So they're like a bit kit. And it allows you to like test a fabric or test a small design. For those of you who are super creative, it's also a great way to get an inexpensive design that you can like repeat to your heart's content. And oh, I forgot to mention, all the bit kit patterns are not currently on the PDF pattern page, but I am going to be adding those. It's just going to take me a bit, probably over the coming weeks. I'll be adding those back, because I know a lot of you like those little snippets of those smaller designs, and you're like doing all sorts of great, amazing, crazy stuff with them. So yay you. So the first one that I'm doing is on the ivory even weave, which is a color I'm going to call fresh cream. And this is my new little design, Mediterranean dogwood, because this is just really cute little dogwood flower. And this is from a vintage pattern that I actually just got in Greece. It was sort of like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of an old pattern. And it was done in a totally different format. It was done in this like super big all over repeating design for this huge table runner. And I was like, I think I just need one dogwood. I'm good with one dogwood and some stars. But you can see the fringe technique right here. So you can see that each one of these designs will have you put a row of stitches all along the perimeter, and then you just remove the threads. So it's a super easy way to finish them, and they end up looking like a little carpet, which I thought was really cute. And so I have that one. It's Mediterranean dogwood on the fresh cream. I have a blue one that I literally just finished last night. I stayed up late finishing it so I could share it with you today. The blue one is actually, I don't know yet what I'm going to name it. I haven't named it yet. I have to give some thought to that. But this one, again, was another design I saw in a great big repeating design that was huge. It was designed for like a 3-foot long table runner. And I just thought the element alone was really fun. And I thought this kind of felt like a little tiny carpet. And I think especially once we do the fringe. And on this one, I'll probably do the fringe a little longer, just for something a little different. But this is also on the Aegean Sky even weave. And I added those little touches of coral. Let me get a little closer. I added some little touches of coral because I thought, why not? And this fabric is also really great too if you're just sort of in a place in your stitching right now or at some point where you're like, I've been working on all that 36 count or the 40 count or the 32 count and my eyes need a break. Well, the even weave is really fantastic for that. You get all the fun of stitching, but it's just not quite as hard on your eyes. Also great for beginners, for teaching, for, if you have somebody that's really interested in seeing you stitching and they're like, oh, where do I start? This is a great starting point. So the last one is actually my super bright one that I just decided to lean into in folk embroidery, you'll oftentimes find these very bright colors. And I love them. I love to work with them from time to time because they're just so much fun to stitch. They're so happy to stitch. And this little design is going to be like a little tiny border. It's like a little mini border design with these fabulous little flowers. It's actually from an 18th century Greek island cushion. The cushion itself was like way bigger, but I decided to kind of just use like a little bit of it. And it's worked in really nice soft blue, and then the coral and the leaf green and a nice kind of butter yellow. This will also have the fringe finish on it. And this is on the white even weave. The white even weave, I think I'm going to name it Mediterranean Jasmine. I don't know. I just was in a really fanciful naming mood. I thought that'd be fun. So that's the even weave fabric. So that's coming really soon. And there'll be kits for that as well as like bit kits. So you'll kind of have options there. If you want to make basket cloths, if you want to do bit kits, you've got all these like fabulous options. So, wow. Now, so the fabric. Oh, let's talk about more fabric. New fabric that I'm designing for. Now this is really kind of sneak peek because it'll probably be months before I release stuff on these fabrics. But I saw them in Greece and I got small quantities of them to start playing around with them because I was just so intrigued. So when I was in the mill, the warehouse in Athens, I was walking around and chatting with the owner, and he's like, well, here, do you want any of this? And he shows me this fabric, and it, as you can see, it looks like a canvas. I think you can see that. Okay, it looks like a canvas. And I said, oh no, we don't do needlepoint designs. I don't need needlepoint canvas. They produce it, but I'm like, no, we don't do needlepoint. He's like, it's not for needlepoint. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, it's the hot water one. I'm like, the what? The hot water what? And he's like, the one that you do in the hot water. And I'm like, no clue. What are we talking about here? So he went on to explain to me that this fabric is actually used. It's so funny because when he explained it, I was like, wait, I have an embroidery in my collection done with another color of this fabric. And it's so cool. So let me back up and tell you. So basically, this is a counted thread fabric, but it has a lot of sizing added to it. So it's very stiff, like needlepoint canvas. But when you are done stitching on it, you can wash it in hot water, your piece in hot water. And when you wash it in hot water, all the sizing basically melts away, and you're left with this very kind of soft fabric. And as soon as he explained it, I was like, yeah, I have one. So for those of you who have seen the golden celandine design, that design was actually inspired by a little tiny vintage embroidery I got years ago from Greece. And it actually is on this like very distinctive kind of soft canvas fabric that looks a little bit like needlepoint canvas, but feels like a soft cotton. And I just thought it was an old vintage fabric that was no longer produced. Well, it turns out that was not the case. So I'm very curious to play around with this because for a long time now I've wanted to do a design on black. I think sometimes just that combination, that high contrast, really, I don't know, I just think it's like kind of cool and elegant and sophisticated and all the fun things. So I'm going to start playing around with that and we'll see. I'll do reels on the hot water one. So we'll see how that goes. But I thought this could be really fun to create something kind of different. So that's one of the fabrics I got when I was in Greece that I'm really looking forward to playing around with. And then another one that I got, many of you actually have gotten the window pane fabric, which is the one where it's got little squares of counted thread fabric. It's 100% cotton, but then in between the squares is like machine done sort of drawn thread hemming channels. And it's a really cool fabric. Unfortunately, they're not producing it right now, so that's why I don't have it on the website. I can't get it right now. I sold off pretty much everything I had in the thank you sale in November because I only had I think I had maybe 3 yards left. And so so I was walking through the warehouse with him, and I happened to notice this, and it turns out that this is another variation of the window pane fabric. So let me see if I can get this close so you can see it. I don't know if you can see this in the video. It's like, oh, I'll hold this up. Oh wait, how about if I do this? Let me try holding it this way. So basically what you can see is that you've got the same idea of like a counted thread band with machine drawn thread accenting like done here. And this is done in big, let's see, I'm going to step back and hold it so you can see it. It's done in big bands. So these are about, you know, I should have measured them before I started. Let's see how much they are. Yeah, they're about 5, I was going to say 6, but they're about 5.5 inches apart. So what these are really cool for is actually stitching a really cool border down the middle, and then you've got this really cool kind of drawn thread hem kind of filling in some of the space. So I want to play around a little bit more with this fabric. This one is the Sakari color, the raw sugar color, that's a really prized color in Greece and very popular in vintage textiles, but I also got it in white. So this I'm going to be definitely playing around with over the next few months and seeing what we can come up with. Let's see. Whoops. Let me set that out of the way here. Then, okay, so fabric is definitely a big part of like what I'm designing for right now, is learning to incorporate new fabrics and designing new things so that we can have new fabric experiences, which is always fun. But I have a few things to share with you that I've already stitched that I'm just waiting to finish and like pop in my release calendar. I'm still kind of putting together the whole 2025 calendar, and it's coming together really nicely, but I still have some spots that I'm waiting to kind of see when's the perfect time to release something. And the first thing that'll be coming up, and I think this is probably going to be March or April, but this is going to be the design that I'm calling Chloe. Though, now, you probably saw me, if you followed along on Instagram when I was in Greece, this was the design I was stitching as my little travel stitching project when I was in Greece. The design itself is actually a new adaptation of an old design that was one of my very first ones that I called Hermione Floral in Diamond, which first off is way too long of a name, and secondly, I had not realized that Hermione was like a no-go name because everyone associates it with Harry Potter. So we had to give this girl a new name. So I restitched it in a modern color palette. It's very close to the Aegean Arbor color palette that a lot of you really like. But what I did is the original design is an all-over design. So like these are worked all the way. The whole ground of the fabric is filled. And I thought it might be interesting to actually work it as a chevron band. And I am probably going to be finishing this as a cushion cover because I really think it would look great in my house. And so I'm going to finish it as a cushion cover. But I also think it would make a really beautiful table runner. I could totally see somebody like, I'm going to fold it like this, finishing it like, say like this as a table runner. Oh boy, now that I look at that, I'm conflicted. I'm like, wow, do we finish it as a table runner? Do we finish it as a cushion cover? But I think I'm going to go with cushion cover because I have kind of a perfect spot for it in my house. So I think this one's going to go as a cushion cover. It's a really fun stitch. And the reason I chose the name Chloe is that I don't know if you can see this in here. Let me see if I can get closer. There are these little green buds here. And Chloe in Greek means little green bud, little green growing thing, or little shoot or bud. So anyways, so that's Chloe. That's coming very, very soon. Then, oh, I forgot about this one. I tell you, I looked at some of my stuff and I was like, wow, okay, I'm really favoring the blue, gold, green thing. But you guys really like that color combination. So I have been doing more pieces like that. It's a nice alternative to the straight up Mediterranean kind of red, black, blue, green, gold colorway. So, and I like it. I feel like it kind of makes folk embroidery a little bit more modern for a modern home. Greens and blues are just so easy to live with. So I have another small design, and this one I haven't named yet, but it's another little tiny border, table mat border. And this one is on traditional ground cloth, white traditional ground cloth. And it's done with this really simple but very effective knotwork border filled with little diamonds. And it's worked in a really fresh color palette of a leaf green, navy blue, and then the 733 golden olive. So, which is a really livable gold. It's kind of my new fave gold. So that design's going to be releasing soon too. And then this design is going to not release for a while, but I just finished it and I have to show it to you because it is so impressive. Okay, this is probably this has been one of my favorite stitches over the last year. And this is a new table runner design. Whoa! I have not even hemmed it yet. So beautiful. It's actually, I've done it as a table runner. It is inspired by an 18th century Greek cushion design that I've seen in about 3 different permutations in different books and sources. And I just thought it was so cool, but I really thought the negative space needed to be a table runner. And it's done with these beautiful, stately cypress trees on either end. This is a really fun stitch. If you get my emails, you may remember, a few months ago, I said something about I was working on a design and we'd run out of vanilla linen and our new linen hadn't come in yet. And so I just grabbed the porcelain white and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Oh my word. I love it. So this is actually stitched on the white, and this is a really straight up folk embroidery palette color. It's on white linen with the black, the terracotta, the blue, and the green. So really striking design that I'll probably release. I don't know exactly when I'll release. It'll release like summer or maybe even early fall. So I'm very sorry to sneak peek it that far in advance, but I just finished it. So it really looks, I was so excited about this one. Just really, really beautiful. And a really great example of kind of the graceful use of negative space in folk embroideries. Folk embroideries just do such an amazing job of that, of utilizing that negative space and turning it into an entire artistic element in its own right. So anyways, so that's that one. Still haven't even named it, so waiting to name it. I've got to think about that one. Then, the last few things. The last one. This is one that I'm just going to throw out there because I'm not really sure what to do on this one. This is the gorgeous Thracian rose design. This is an adaptation of a vintage embroidery from my collection. The original that I got like at an estate sale, and it is in pretty bad shape. The fabric's really stained, but the design was just like these stylized roses. Oh, I just love them. Loved the straight up Mediterranean color palette. I, of course, happily got to stitching it on the 32 count parchment linen, which I can't get right now. So I'm just wondering what to do. It's funny, I have it photographed as a pattern, ready to release, all the things, and I cannot get the linen. So I'm just curious what everybody thinks. I may decide, the size is kind of big, which means it would be a pretty expensive kit. So I've thought about, I can just release it as a PDF pattern, and then everybody can decide what they want to do with it on their own and find your own fabric and all the things. Or I could make it on a smaller version, and I could work it on either vanilla or ivory, but boy, I really like this parchment. Or I could even do I suppose I could do like maybe a limited release of the kits, but I probably only have enough fabric for like 10 kits. So it's not really, I don't feel like it's fair to do that small of a release. So something that's kind of this special. So I'd welcome your feedback on this one. Would you like to see it in a smaller format? Would you like to just see it as a PDF pattern that you can adapt the way you want? It would be quite easy to make this in a smaller format because you would just lessen the number of repeats of this outer border. And this outer border is really cool. Let me get close so I can show you that. The outer border is really neat. It's basically, it's back stitching, a combination of back stitching and some cross stitching, and then outlining. And it was a bear to design and get the corners right, because the one part of it is a 2-stitch repeat and part of it is a 1-stitch repeat. So those are always a lot of fun. And so it means that this corner and this corner are identical, but this corner and this corner are slightly different. So it's it's one of those ones you got to really pay close attention to the pattern. In traditional folk embroidery, oftentimes when working corners like that, people just didn't worry about it. They just like worked the design across, and if something wasn't quite balanced or even or symmetrical, they were fine with it. But I really try whenever possible to make my designs like symmetrical and balanced, mainly so that it doesn't set you up for failure as a stitcher. I know that can be so frustrating when you're in a pattern and you're like, well, wait, there's a different corner here. So anyways, so that's Thracian Rose. love to hear your thoughts on what we should do with this one. Because again, gorgeous design, looks great, but we can't get the fabric. I am going to check with the mill one more time and find out if there's any chance they might be producing it this year. But in the meantime, I would love to hear what you guys think about that. And that is pretty much a wrap. The one last thing I did want to put a plug for, though, is that I'm very excited about is I got asked to be one of the designers at the Pacific Northwest Stitch Summit. This is a stitch retreat that's been going for a few years now, and it is run by Acorns and Threads Needle Workshop in Portland, Oregon. The owner of Acorns and Threads, Janine, is just a delight. I've done a number of events there at Acorns and Threads. I've done book signings, designer talks, things like that. It's a great community she's built up there. And she basically created this whole retreat. And it happens in September. I think registration is going to open in February. I'll have information on that, and I'll post that on like emails and social and all that stuff. But it's basically a whole weekend of stitching. And so you come, it's at a hotel in Portland, I don't know which one, and you come on Friday afternoon, and you have all Friday afternoon to hang out with your stitchy buddies, all Saturday, and then all through Sunday morning. And she has 2 designers come, and I am one of the designers. The other designer is Gigi of the Artsy Housewife. And so each of us come. Gigi and I just had our first designer chat yesterday, and our styles are very different. So we're going to use a shared palette instead of trying to coordinate our designs. Some designers coordinate and some don't. We're still figuring out our theme, but we do know that we want to use a very sort of like warm, cozy, autumnal palette. Pretty excited to work with it. I like put out my little floss cones and I was like, oh, I can't wait to come up with something. And so when you sign up for the retreat, part of your retreat fee is you actually get a full project bag with little goodies from each of the designers. So it's a pretty fun little event. I will warn you, I heard that last year they sold out registrations in 4 minutes. So I would say if and when, once you get the information and if you're interested in coming, like don't delay. I know that Janine is talking about adding more spots this year. So I think there's going to be some more spots open. And there also are Zoom spots. I believe there are 100 Zoom spots available for the event. So you have options, and I'm really looking forward to that. Whole weekend of stitching, and I get to design something just for the retreat attendees. So it's going to be really, really fun. I love in-person events like that. It's a really great way for me to, lift my head from my, laptop and like look around. So I want to thank you for joining me today. Thank you for your patience while it's taking me a few months to get back to FlossTube. I'm so glad to be back. And I have loads more fun stuff planned for 2025. It's going to be an amazing year filled with lots of stitching and lots of color and lots of beautiful folk embroidery. So thanks again for joining me.